over in Fort Wayne today. Then I got a little, every Tuesday I got a little life coaching thing I do with some guys on the
Got your RSVP for the oral argument luncheon?
so I'm listening on the way home.
Good. I'm looking forward to that.
That's going to be fun.
I had something scheduled,
So Tuesdays are,
but I said move it. That'll be me.
Yeah.
We went up. Dad argued at the with the Court of Appeals. They do those appeals on wheels.
Four people, we have quorum.
Indiana versus South Bend. So we went up there and did that. I didn't argue. I just sat up there with them. So but it was interesting.
I haven't really looked through the case document yet, but Josh, I guess, did it briefly, and it's about searches of cell phones.
Oh, okay. Should be an interesting topic anyway.
Yep.
All right, good evening. We're going to go ahead and call the Manchester Community Schools Board of Trustees meeting to order. I'd like to begin, we put our norms up here. Everybody loves norm. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is our regularly scheduled board meeting. And I just asked the board, hey, let's kind of consider some of these norms to make some of the invisible parts of our culture visible. And so we're just starting with them. I'm sure we'll talk more about them and kind of decide, guys, like if these are the norms that we want to have or not. So first of all, I'm asking that we focus on and attend to the task at hand, that we would be aware of our presence on the room, that we know when to step up and step back. The best boards have really developed this dance of knowing when to listen and when to speak. And then finally, we are dealing with super complex issues. So one of the norms is to expect and accept a lack of closure. Like we're not going to solve everything tonight in the next 45 minutes, but we will sure do our best to attend to the task at hand. So thank you, Connie, for that. We'd like to officially welcome our visitors. Thanks for joining us tonight. And let's go ahead and begin then with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so there's kind of a new setup tonight, and Mr. Miller, did you want to say some things?
Tonight's our first night. We are streaming our meeting live onto the internet. It is on YouTube, and Mr. Markham sent out a link via Facebook earlier this evening so people at home could get to it. Hopefully they are. I saw that there's at least 8 people who were waiting for us to get started. A couple of things I just need for the board members to be aware of. Don't shy away from your microphone, please. It's important that those that are at home are able to hear you, so please step up to the microphone. Audience, principals, okay, comments need to be made up here, all right, at the appropriate time. So, again, if you're sitting back there, you're asked a question, speak to you three, please, come up here and answer it. That way everybody can hear that. The good news is if you want to go home and watch yourself on the web stream, once it's done, it will be saved there for people to watch again. Or if you have friends that didn't get the opportunity to come tonight or watch the streaming, they will be able to go out to the Manchester Community Schools channel on YouTube and capture that or watch it. All right? And we'll kind of keep you posted. Maybe next month we'll give you a little bit update on how things went.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Miller. And just for the extra work, and Mr. Pressel helped a little bit with it, and a lot of it, and just being able, so that's the reason why there's this different look to things, and just really appreciate the extra work you did, Tony. Thank you. All right, so on the agenda item C there, consideration of agenda additions or deletions.
Yes, I have a few here. First of all, we have a Sunday rental. The only difference there is that it's been moved to the intermediate school, and so the rental form or request is the same, other than the location has changed. That's the only difference. Also, we have on the agenda the handheld devices. I'm going to pull that as far as discussion, because we're not ready to discuss that at this point. My intent is we have several new board members, and I want to make sure it's been brought up in some of our meetings, and I wanted to give them some background information. So when we reach that point, I think we'll have a work session on that and talk about that and get some feedback on that. So we'll pull that. Also, under personnel, the media and technology assistant position, need to further investigate that. And then also the minutes of February 12th and March 4th, the executive session. Those items are deleted. And then we have one addition, and that is a resignation of my secretary, Connie Marinsky, and we want to add that to the agenda.
Great, so we'll go with those.
I have one more.
Yeah.
At the end of the meeting, for just board awareness, I would like to add a slight discussion on the facility audit recommendations that were done by Barton Co. Billama.
So you wanted to add that under the administrative updates and reports?
Yeah, it'll work there, I think.
All right. Anything else? All right, then. Are there any public comment on agenda items? And Mr. Michael, consent items?
Yes, we have, I'll get to my spot here. We have the minutes of the February 12th school board meeting. We have claims, the regular claims dated March 12th. We have the prepaid claims of February 1st through the 28th, and then the payroll claims dated February the 8th and February 22nd. There's no grant request or consideration. We have donations of $150 to the Manchester Junior Senior High from the Fellowship of Christian Athlete program from the First Brethren Church. Donation of $50 to Manchester Junior and Senior High Fellowship of Christian Athletes program from First Brethren Church. Donation of $351 to Manchester Junior Senior High Library/Media Center for the Manchester Junior High School Library and Audio Visual endowment facilitated by the Community Foundation of Wabash County. And then we have the last donation of $16.24 to the Manchester Junior Senior High Squire Team Production Services Film Club from various donors. Also, we have that for your consideration at this point.
Thank you.
Mr. Michael,
Yes.
I thought we were dropping the minutes of the executive board session from the consent agenda on February 12th. You read it off again.
No, that was the board meeting, February 12th. Regular board meeting.
I know, I meant the executive session on February 12th is what I asked to have removed from the consent.
I believe I did that, didn't I? Yes, I did the 12th and the 4th. February 12th and March 4th.
Right.
So is there a motion to accept the consent items A through D?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, so there's been a motion by Mr. Hensley and a second by Mr. Vanderpool. All those in favor? And opposed? All right, so motion passes 3-1.
And then we have the personnel. We have a maternity leave from the elementary. We have intermediate as far as a resignation. And then the Manchester Junior Senior High, we have an employment recommendation. And then we have resignations 1, 2, and 3. We have a retirement. Edith Stone, she's at the end of this school year, will be 34 years, quite an accomplishment. And we wish her well, and we also have a retirement as far as a bus driver for your consideration.
Is there a motion?
I just have a quick question, and Dave, maybe this is where, maybe not, correct me if I'm wrong. You're still seeing these items that he removed at the beginning on the list, is that?
2 and 3.
2 and 3, is that what you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, my issue is with number 2.
Okay, but Russ effectively saying he's pulling those, remove those, even though, yeah, they're still listed here because this was printed, is my understanding that?
Yeah, he removed both items 2
From
and
consent.
3. Both of the executive session minutes were
From the
removed.
consent. And then also the MIS employment, number 1, under E personnel, that has been removed.
Yes, Russ removed
Yes.
that also.
Okay, so when we say we're looking for a motion and voting, it's just the remaining items.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Then I'll move that we accept the remaining items.
So there's a motion by Mr. Vanderpool to accept the personnel consent items. Is there a second? Can I second?
It's not Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay,
but-
that's fine. So is
I
there
have a
second?
question on this ECH.
Well, just a minute. I think according to Robert's Rule of Order, is it according to Robert's Rule of Order, we get a motion, a second, and then discussion? Is that Robert's Rules of Order?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll second.
thank you. So we have a motion by Mr. Vanderpool and a second by Mr. Hensley. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, it says pending ECH DCS check.
I-
Could somebody explain that, please?
I think that's been removed entirely.
There's another one under.
There's another one down at the bottom for
Yeah.
Terry
Oh,
McKee,
okay.
volunteer band. I don't know, DCS, I'm guessing is Department of Child Services?
Right.
Okay, what is ECH?
Criminal history.
Criminal history background check. So there's 2 different checks, and they've started the process. We just don't have that information back from those entities yet. Sometimes they can take up to 2 weeks to receive those back.
And even though the board approves it, if it comes back and it's rejected, then it's null and void.
Okay, but are they in front of kids? I mean, are we hiring them now? Are we hiring them now? Or are we hiring them after the check comes back?
Probably hiring them now based on the need.
Right.
So if the responses we got on those checks came back poorly, they would then be just let go at that point in time?
Yes.
Yes.
No matter how the board votes, it would be null and void. Because that's what you're voting on is they pass those.
So who ultimately makes
Checks.
that decision and whose responsibility is that?
As far as whether they,
Well, it looks, the risk. Is that what you're kind of getting at, Dave?
Yeah, you know, it's a volunteer band assistant. I mean, I don't know any of these people. I don't know if they're members of the community or where they're coming from. If we vote and then it turns out later, you know, what if we put a sexual predator or somebody that's on a list in front of kids?
You'd like to see the results first.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with it.
Well, I know sometimes in industry it's kind of the same too. It's like drug testing, right? You hire people and then do it, but yeah, I kind of get your point. The other question I had on this, if there's a little discussion, is when we lose someone, are there exit interviews to understand? So like if we lose a student, we should understand why we lost that student. If we lose somebody from the corporation, do we do exit interviews to understand why that person left the corporation?
A lot of times, yeah, there's reasons given to why, and then, I mean, I don't know in the past what's been done, but it's something that we can definitely do.
Okay.
And I know in the past, there's been some exit interviews that people have asked for exit interviews. Board members have been a part of that, so at least some there has been.
And I know with the background checks, at least what we've tried to do is put their name to the board so that they could be approved, so when that background check goes through, they're ready to go in their position. If we wait sometimes for the background check to clear, then we have to wait for the next board meeting to get them approved, and there's that law where we may not have anyone in that position. And again, sometimes it depends. Yeah, are they a volunteer? Are they with someone, another adult that's already been approved, and they're not alone with kids and those type of things? So we take all those things into consideration.
Well, like I said, I'm new to this, and it just seems like every month we have why aren't we keeping our people, I guess, is a better question to ask. It seems like every month. It just seems like every month we got somebody resigning and we're hiring. Why do we have such a high turnover?
Yeah, a lot of those positions, just speaking as a former athletic director, are coach type positions, aide positions, that kind of come and go, and they're seasonal, and they may do it for a year and then don't want to, or they volunteer and then they can't the next year, and some of them are college students and those type of things. So ideally, yes, we don't want people to come and go a lot, but I know in certain areas it's just kind of part of the nature of the beast, I guess you could say.
Yeah, normally there may not be an official exit interview, but I guarantee you as a building principal, they're very familiar and updated as far as what's happening in that teacher's life, and they're sensitive to that. So I'd say 90% of the time or more, they have a pretty good idea why.
Okay. I mean, in industry, there's associated costs with retention, right? Anywhere from, depending on the
Sure.
skill level of the person, $4,500 to, $8,000. So I just, that was the question.
And of course, if we look at the instructional assistants, their pay's not the best. And if they get a better opportunity, I mean, that's income for them. They get a better opportunity. There's probably a little bit more movement in that particular category than in the certified staff. But that's normal. I mean, you see that all the time, especially now in tougher times where jobs aren't quite as available, you see more consistency in their work, and you don't see as much of this.
Thank you.
I guess one final question. Since pending background checks, that volunteer band assistant position, assistant leads me to believe that someone else will be there with the children the whole time. Anyway.
Yeah, correct.
It's a policy, in the notes that the last superintendent left. Is it NEMA? NEMA, somebody that reviews policies. The previous, what is it?
Neola.
Neola, thank you. Are we going back to them, or are we gonna have somebody review our policies? I mean, is this something that can bite us right here?
As far as employment?
Yeah, if we put somebody in front of kids before the background check is done, I guess what I'm saying is our policy up to date on personnel?
I believe it is.
Okay.
I mean, it's within the last 5 years, and normally that's kind of, now it needs to be reviewed, you're correct. And I do have a process developed, and at some point in time, I want to bring it to the board.
Okay.
As far as how we can do that. I know there are a lot of districts that have gone away from Neola because it is very, very expensive. My previous employment, I was trying to convince that, we'd have a policy manual that was more updated or that type of thing, and but the cost was just phenomenal. And other superintendents that I've talked to that were with Neola, they've ventured away from that. So it's one of those things you can easily ignore, or it can get away from you if you kind of forget it. But if you have a process in place and a timeline, then you're more apt to have, and you're probably within 3 to 5 years. That's pretty updated at that point. That may seem strange, but that's kind of the way it works.
Yeah, I noticed that the last major update was in 14.
Right.
There was a couple updated in 17, and I think Mr. Bisher did a review on security here, just last year at 18.
Yeah. So what the first step would be, and I've already contacted the ISBA, Julie Slavens, that's her area, and there are policies that are absolutely required by law that should be in there, and they have a list of those. So the group would have to sit down and look at that list compared to what we have policy-wise to find out where are the gaps, what do we need to add, and then they also provide a list of what they recommend. So you have a little more leeway there from that standpoint. And then, once we have that in place, then we can begin. There are 6 sections, so I would suggest that we look at 2 sections a year. And then, of course, if section 3, there's a policy that's, been changed by the legislators or whatever, we can always go in and make that adjustment, but our focus would be on sections 1 and 2 for the year. And then the following year would be sections 3 and 4, and then the third. So every 3 years you'd be on a rotation. But if something comes up in another section, you would definitely go in and correct that and make it accurate.
So what I'm hearing is then this is on your radar.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I've got it typed up and in my file and just waiting on the opportunity to, because I realize the board has a lot of things on your plate. And, I want to be sensitive to that as well.
And for you folks out here, I don't know if you saw what happened in the paper last week. Wabash kind of ended up on the front page of the paper. They kind of got their steps out of order and ended up having to table some approval. So that's where this conversation came from. Thanks, Russ.
Yep.
I have one more question for Mr. Michael and Jeremy. Is that industry standard? Hire somebody, then when background checks come in, either continue their employment or terminate? I mean, Russ, from the other schools you've been at, and Jeremy, from what we've done here in the past, is that
Yeah, the
standard?
previous employer, it was the time frame, and in some cases, you're not absolutely sure. It may be longer than 3 weeks, and that's unfortunate. So then you're sitting there, you got a sub in the classroom, for the next 3 weeks. Is that in the best interest? And here again, the administrators, they take a lot of time and effort. They don't just pull somebody off the street and say, you're going to teach 3rd grade today. It just doesn't happen. They look for certain characteristics and get to know that person. And then they observe and monitor when they're in their building, especially if they're brand new.
So they're vetted a lot before we even get to this point anyways?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And they have references. We contact those. And so there's a lot of things happen before we actually bring it to the board. It's unfortunate that it's not more expedient as far as the other criminal history and so forth, but you work with it the best you can. Monthly meetings, it makes it tough.
Is there any more discussion? I just want to thank the board for the discussion. I think that's a really important part of being a healthy board.
Good questions.
They were great questions. Thank you. So if I remember correctly, Mr. Vanderpool, you made a motion, and Mr. Hensley seconded the motion to approve the consent items under personnel. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. New business. Dr. Lippy, you're up.
Yeah, so, they pushed the rental to Randy's building?
Yes, the 14th, April 14th.
Okay, all right, well, I can take that one.
Up there.
Okay, so we've got a couple building rentals, and so the first 2 are for the the German Baptist Church Youth Group to use our facilities. Those are on Sundays. We do this periodically. Traditionally, Becky's kind of helped with that, and so it's been a good group. They take good care of the facility, so we asked for approval for them to use our facility. Do you want me to go ahead and you want to do these separate, or?
Is it okay if we do like 1 through 4?
Or at least 1 through 3 anyway with the rentals?
Okay, yeah, 1 through 3.
Okay.
Okay.
And then we also for the item number 3, the Sunday facility rental for the bicycle races. That's usually conducted by Jeff Hahn. That has usually traditionally been in the fall. This year it didn't work out for him very well in the fall, so he's going to come back. His request is to run that June 8th and 9th. They run around the buildings. Again, I think I just ask for your approval that they be allowed to do that. It's been a good event in the past.
Thank you.
So for those 3 items, we ask for your approval.
We have a motion to approve the facility rentals.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Turflinger. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Mr. Vanderpool. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the facility rentals? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Dr. Lippy.
Yes, item 4, overnight field trip. What an honor. Our FFA soil judges for the first time are going to nationals in Oklahoma on April 27th through May 4th, representing the state of Indiana. And just a great honor for those kids. It's the first time they've ever been to nationals, so really proud of that group. And so we ask your approval for that overnight field trip.
Excellent, thank you. Is there a motion for approval of the overnight field trip?
All motion.
There's been a motion by Mr. Hensley. Is there a second? And a second by Mr. Turflinger. Any discussion?
How are they getting there? Private charter bus, school bus, flying?
Actually,
They haven't determined exactly yet. They either will take a minibus or they may rent a vehicle to go out there.
How many are we talking?
There's 5 students, and then they would have at least probably 1 or 2 chaperones.
it'd be FFA sponsor and then a chaperone.
So Gwen's going with them?
Yes.
Gwen Mize is going with them?
Yes, she's going to take the group, and then they've got a chaperone who will be approved. We'll have a background check that will go along with them as well. As far as the vehicle, we've also had somebody step up and be willing to pay that rental for the vehicle if they choose to use that rather than a school vehicle.
I don't want to make an assumption here, and there's no students going to be driving?
No students.
Going that far?
Yeah, no.
Okay,
No, it'd just be the chaperones.
thank you.
Is there any other discussion? So there's a motion by Mr. Hensley and a second by Mr. Turflinger. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Self.
We'd ask your approval for the overnight field trip to Camp Crosley. It's an annual event that the 6th grade students do. We have done that for a lot of years. It's an event that the students all talk about as a very memorable event. The 6th grade students and the teachers go up to Camp Crosley. It will be this year, Monday, May 13th overnight, and then on May 14th. This year, once again, PTO is helping with the funding of that. They provide a certain amount per student. We have not raised the rate on that in a while. This year it'll be $5 more for student expense, so the students will pay $40, and I think it's $25 then for the PTO will pitch in for that. So once again, for that type of event, that's all the food and everything. So like I said, it's always an exciting event for them.
Okay, so is there a motion?
I'll move.
Mr. Vanderpool is moving to approve the overnight field trip to Camp Crosley. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by Mr. Hensley. So we have a motion by Mr. Vanderpool, a second by Mr. Hensley. All those or is there any discussion?
Are all the 6th graders going? Is there anybody, let me rephrase my question. Is there anybody going because they can't afford to go?
We take care of that.
Okay, so everybody's going.
Everybody has the opportunity to go if they'd like to go, and if there's a financial problem, we can take care of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any more discussion? Right, then we have a motion by Mr. Vanderpool and a second by Mr. Hensley to approve the overnight field trip to Camp Crosley. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Mr. Michael.
Wombat, Wawasee Miami area program. It's a special ed cooperative that Manchester participates. And we have 4 school districts. And just recently we had our 5th district apply. And they went through a process, checking out all the avenues to make sure that it didn't create problems for the current corporations. And we wanted to be a positive and a plus. And the contract that you have, and hopefully you have reviewed, basically is the governing board has gone in and made the corrections. So if there's talks about 4 school districts, it's actually converted to 5. And the governing board has already approved this revision, and it goes to each one of the boards for their approval. So I'm bringing it to you this evening for your approval.
Is there a motion?
I'll motion.
A motion by Mr. Hensley. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
And a second by Mr. Vanderpool. Is there discussion?
I just have a couple of questions. There's not an increased cost here. They're paying their own costs, right?
Absolutely.
I was reading through it today.
There's initial fee. They're going to pay like $80,000 up front. And then as we work through the school year, if there's a shortage, then they'll pick up, and each district will pick up. But in the analysis, before we accepted them, that was the thing. Those are the types of things they look at. Is it going to hurt our situation financially, and services that are provided for our kids, and those kind of things. And all that has been done before any invitation was offered.
Who was the other district?
You're going to test my memory, aren't you?
Oh, I didn't know if you said that or not. So.
Prue, North Miami, Wabash, MSD, and the city of Wabash schools. Did I get everybody? I think in Manchester. Yeah.
How many students from Manchester, just curious, how many students from Manchester are involved in this?
I'm not sure I can offhand tell you that.
You're going to need
So
the
several students.
mic.
And these are the types of things that if you went out on your own to hire some of these specialists would be almost, I mean, it's a savings issue for all 5 districts. That's part of the reason North Miami's trying to want it in, you know, so they could benefit from that as well. And if we take the right ones, it'll only strengthen the co-op. And like I say, that all that analysis was done prior to, and all that information was shared with the governing board. Governing board consists of the superintendents of the 5 districts, and we meet once a month with the director and make decisions and that type of thing. But in this case, adding someone changes the agreement, service agreement, and we've approved it as a governing board. Now we need to bring it back to each of the 5 districts, to the school boards to have their approval as well.
How that came about, North Miami lost their co-op. They were with Logansport, and they pulled out and did their own thing, and that's why they were looking for some place to go.
Yeah, I remember. Thank you, Russ.
And am I correct in thinking it's really not about the number of kids that we're serving through this, but it's more about the special needs that are there? So it might be somebody who's hard of hearing where you might only have one, but we definitely need to provide services. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
And then you talk about lawsuits, you know, if you're not providing, you know, that not only impacts the special ed teachers, but also the regular ed teachers as far as meeting IEP requirements and that type of thing. And they are an excellent resource if we need them, as far as programming and that type of thing.
I just feel like it's really fortunate that we're part of that. A good thing. Is there any more discussion? So we have a motion from Mr. Hensley and a second from Mr. Vanderpool to approve the Wabash Miami area programming agreement. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Mr. Markham.
Okay, I'm asking for your approval for an additional appropriation for our debt service of $236,625. And this came to you, to the previous board in December of 2018. When we submitted our 2019 budget, we didn't allocate enough funds into our debt service. It was a calculation error. So when we submitted our budget, the DLGF contacted us, said, you're short this amount in your debt service of what you should have. You'll have to do an additional appropriation. So I said, great, we'll do that. Thought I would be ahead of the game and get that done. Did that, submitted it to the DLGF in December, and they emailed and said thanks, but this has to be approved in 2019 since it's a 2019 budget issue, and they wouldn't approve it in 2018. So now I'm bringing it back to you since it's the 2019 budget, and that's where it needs to go. So looking for your approval so that we have all the funds necessary in our debt service that we should have.
So is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move.
All right, so there's a motion by Mr. Vanderpool. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And a second by Mr. Turflinger. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Markham, would you go ahead and explain that we're not raising taxes here or
No.
anything? When you appropriation makes people think that
Sure.
we're raising taxes.
Yeah, no, all that's been calculated by the DLGF. They made those adjustments knowing that we'd have to do an appropriation for that. So they did that adjustment in the budget. We just need to have the board approval, and I have to send the paperwork to them so that they're aware of that being accepted by the board.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Right, so there's been a motion by Mr. Vanderpool and a second by Mr. Turflinger for the approval of the additional appropriation resolution. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Mr. Markham.
I'm asking for your approval tonight for the tax anticipation warrant. We collected bids. We received one bid from Crossroads Bank for $1 million at 3.25% interest. And again, this helps with our cash flow, cash balance for our accounts, and mostly $800,000 of it would go into our operations, $200,000 of it would go into our education fund. Historically, this is something Manchester Community Schools has done every year for a number of years, has done this $1 million tax anticipation warrant to help with our cash flow and cash balance until we receive all the incomes and revenues from the taxes for the operations account.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion by Mr. Turflinger. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Mr. Hensley. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Markham, we discussed something like this last month, didn't we?
Yeah, I asked for your approval to advertise it, and you gave that approval, and it was in the News Journal, February 20th and February 27th editions. It was advertised in there.
And just resulted in one bid from Crossroads?
Yes.
Is there any more discussion? So there's been a motion by Mr. Turflinger, and I'm very sorry, I don't know who seconded, and a second by Mr. Hensley to approve and accept the tax anticipation warrant. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Mr. Markham.
Okay, I'll ask Becky Landis to step up to the microphone if you would, please. Thank you. Last month, Becky presented to you the Food to School purchasing cooperative that we would like to join. And so tonight, she gave you all that information. If you do have any additional questions, now would be a great time to ask her. But we're asking for your approval for us to be a part of the Food to School cooperative.
So is there a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Vanderpool and a second.
I'll second.
Mr. Hensley? So there's been a motion by Mr. Vanderpool, a second by Mr. Hensley. Is there any discussion or questions for Mrs. Landis? No? All right, then. So there's been a motion by Mr. Vanderpool, a second by Mr. Hensley for the approval of the Food to School contract. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Yay. We're excited about that, Becky.
I'd like to thank you for the extra effort too, Becky.
All right, and Mr. Michael.
At the last board meeting, we talked about or discussed policy 1060, and we agreed that we would put an X or a line through 5:30, the time frame. And now I'm bringing it back, and we want to do a first reading this evening, and then I will bring it back the following month, and we'll do a second reading with hopefully approval, and that'll become official.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, that we accept the first reading.
Okay, so there's been a motion by Mr. Turflinger to accept the first reading of amended policy number 1060. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
And a second by Mr. Vanderpool. Any discussion?
So this isn't exactly changing the time, it's just striking that from the.
Striking, and then you can, every January when we do our organizational meeting, we establish the time. And it gives us a lot more flexibility, if I remember the discussion.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Turflinger and a second by Mr. Vanderpool to approve this first reading of amended policy number 1060. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Mr. France.
With Mr. Hensley's inclusion, he signed a conflict of interest statement. This isn't actually an action item. We just need to show it in the minutes that it has been accepted. It's been signed and given to Mr. Michaels for, I guess, just our records. So there's no voting that needs to be required.
All right, thank you. All right, then we are ready for administrative updates and reports. Principals.
Feels weird being on this side. So, as usual, I always say we're busy, and we are busier than ever. So last Friday we had bingo night hosted by the PTO. That was amazing. We were way over what we thought would come. We had to put out 5 extra tables. We sold a ton of food and bingo cards, and the kids had so much fun, and it was a huge success. So I hope we do that again next year. Next week on Wednesday the 20th, we have kindergarten roundup, and it's here at the auditorium from noon to 12. In the morning, we're going to the preschools and screening those students, and then in the afternoon, the parents can drop off paperwork, or anyone that's not in preschool can come in for their screening, ask about immunization questions, and any registration. We'll do the process for them as well. Kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade just had all of their music programs last week. We're trying to get those done since Mrs. Huber is going on maternity leave. So Thursday we have our 3rd grade Hats musical. So that's over at the PAC, and that will seal us up for the year, which seems early, but you know. iRead starts next week, so my 3rd grade students and teachers have been hunkered down, just working diligently, trying to get them ready for that. My biggest news that I'm excited to announce is we were Manchester Schools, so it would be My Rise program, which is Sarah Emmert's special ed class and Erica Vogel's class, were chosen through Project Success to be a Project Success model classroom. And they only picked 3 districts in the whole state of Indiana, so we were one of those. So I'm taking 2 of my teachers tomorrow, and we're going to get trained on what that means. And so it just means that people will come to our school and look and see how we do things. And, you know, we're going to show best practice, and we're going to show lots of hands-on and doing amazing things in those classrooms. So it's a huge honor, and it was a great accomplishment for those 2 teachers. So we're excited about that.
Thank you.
Out at MIS, we are in the middle of our 3rd full week of school, finally. Thank you, Mr. Markham, for no delays or cancellations or anything. We'll just keep it going that way. And it feels like it's been a weird spring, just trying to get things in the swing of things. So we're happy to be there. As a staff, we are working on implementing professional learning communities. This is something the high school has been doing. We've kind of been watching them, and we're starting to work on that. It's a slow, ongoing process. You know, it works with collaborative teams, and we've had our team set up, and it's just, you know, a lot of what we've already been doing, but just formalizing some things and making sure that, you know, I don't want to say that every classroom is going to be doing exactly the same thing, but we're trying to make sure that students have the similar experiences in each of the classrooms as they're going through. So that's what we've been working on. We have some students who will be retaking the iRead. Thank you to Ms. Kors. She's going to help us out with that. That's not something we have given in the past, so we've got some that we need to take care of there. We met today. MA Hire worked with us to meet with SCAN, and they are going to be doing a personal safety program. This is something that we had scheduled with DCS earlier in the year. It got canceled because of weather. The presenter, we couldn't reschedule with that, and this is an idea that we've wanted to look at. So SCAN is going to be helping us out with that at MIS and MES. So we'll be doing that in April, and so we'll be sending information to parents. Once again, we've got Camp Crosley. Thank you for approving that. The students are looking forward to that. We've got a lot of things going on in the spring. It's going to be kind of an interesting time because they've changed iLearn. So our testing will be later in the year, along with some other activities going on. So we're trying to make some adjustments to make sure that we don't have conflicts there, but at the same time, we don't want to direct everything at iLearn, because it's not all about the test; it's about the learning. So, but that you'll be hearing more about in the future. So I believe that's all I have right now.
Thank you, Mr. Self.
Yes.
iLearn is iStep.
Yeah, yes, it's the,
Thank you.
And it does not have the two components that it did in the past. In the past, we tested about this time. We did the applied portion and it was that was the writing. Did I say that right?
Constructed response.
Yeah, the constructed response, all that, the writing portion, and then later in the year we did the multiple choice on the computer. So this will all be done on the computer, and it will all be done. The testing window is the end of April. It's about 4 weeks, end of April, beginning of May, that we'll be doing that. But yeah, it's the new state iStep. It's now called iLearn.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, it's been an exciting month. Always a hub of activity at the high school. This month, over the last month, has been no different, kind of rounding out our winter activities. We want to wish best of luck, good luck to our Science Olympiad team, who will be headed to state tournament this Friday morning. I believe the bus is going to head out. They've got a breakfast. The parents always put on a nice breakfast right out here in the foyer, and they're going to be heading out at 9 a.m. I think I've got Miss Officer Birch ready with a police car to escort them out of town. So really exciting. That's just a great group of kids. Sue Janegi, with all the years, she's now stepping down. So we just really want to send her off in style, and her group of kids, along with Mr. Miller, who's been there to help, along, and with Miss Smith, our chemistry and physics teacher, who also helps with Science Olympiad. Is there anybody else I'm missing with as far as adults, parents?
Community members, parents.
Tons of parents. So wish them the best of luck this Friday in state. Also along over the last month, we want to wish our 7th grade girls basketball team congratulations. They made it to the championship game. They kind of took their lumps a little bit during the regular season, but made it to the championship game at the RRC 3 Saturdays ago. Did a great job. So nice job with the 7th grade. Congratulations again to Delton Moore, who finished his long, lustrous high school career, wrestling career, with a trip to the state finals a few weeks back. So, we've got one more left. We've had a lot of Moores run on the Moore family, Ashley, but he's not a wrestler. But wish that group the best of luck in the future. Our boys swimming capped off a very nice season with a strong showing in sectional, paced by first place finished by Parker York in the 50. Just did a great job this year. Parker just kept getting better and better. Also had an exciting conference championship under his belt. And I believe I brought this last month, but again, I want to also mention Hallie Briner and the girls swim team as well. Just did a fantastic job. Coach Slofkin's with us this morning. Real exciting coming up in the future too. We'll have the group, a big core back next year, so we're really going to be attuned to the swim team. So great job to the swimmers this year. Congratulations go out to band and choir over the weekend. They had strong performances at ISMA, and both teams performed very well. We also want to recognize our honor band students who performed at the Honeywell Center Friday night. Just a great job by that group of students. Finally, FFA, we mentioned a little bit about the soils judging team, which is proceeding to nationals for the first time ever. Well, we had another strong showing over the weekend with 21 students finishing first in their proficiencies. You must place first in order to get to go to state. So we've got 21 kids, just an unbelievable amount of kids, who will be moving on to state competition later this spring. That's as far as the extracurriculars, and then we also just want to mention that we still have an I-STEP going, our I-STEP 10. We'll have that for another year or two. I think, no, this will be one more year after this one. And so I-STEP 10, and then they've got another round coming up in April. Of course, we also do iLearn with our 7th and 8th graders. So it's a very open-ended question. There's no time limit on iLearn. We're going to do a lot of learning about iLearn over the next month. So that'll be in April, shortly after we get back from spring break. Also, I wanted to mention we had a couple board members. We took a trip up to Paragon. What was that, 2 weeks ago, gentlemen? And talked with some of the executives at Paragon just about what kind of opportunities do you have for our kids. They're just across our county border. I think we checked 20 minutes, 22 minutes door to door. I think Mr. Hensley had kind of done a little stuff just to see how long it would take our kids to get up there if they decided to do an intern. 22 minutes. I mean, that's great. I mean, we can't even get to the outside of some of our districts in 22 minutes. So that's very doable. They seem very open. Seem very excited about what we're doing with their kids. They have advanced manufacturing opportunities. So, along with IMD and Pre-Med Tech, which just moved into town, just real exciting time. And so real excited for the future for what that may hold in front of us. So that's all I have today.
Are you going to reach out to those folks, the ones here in town and them, and set up another meeting? I'd like to really pursue this so we're ready in September.
And then also, we want to touch base with Mr. Blum about the idea of maybe having some interns over the summer. And the exciting part about that is we've got some kids that are kind of running a dual track. We've got a lot of kids that they have that 4-year college dream. We want to pursue that, but yet they also have that, what do I do in case? That other parallel track that, what if I fall off the 4-year college track? What is there for me then? This is a great backup plan. It might be better than the primary plan for a lot of these kids. And so by doing that, students don't have to mess with their 4-year college plan. They can actually get a foot in the workplace over the summer. So just real exciting.
Well, better yet, Paragon will help pay for their 4-year college if they pursue that.
Absolutely.
So that's a good deal for the student and the parents.
So just real excited. So yes, absolutely, we'll follow up with
Yeah, maybe we could once we get our superintendent hired and get him on board, maybe we could schedule a work session and get everybody in here and sit down and pursue this a little harder.
like that. Thank you.
Thank you. MTA.
Good evening. As Dr. Lippy talks about things that have happened and accolades from the past, I'm going to talk about what our members are doing going forward in the next couple weeks. As we head into the fourth quarter and head towards spring break, several of our member teachers are involved in a variety of activities and are dedicating a lot of time. Currently, the NJHS, or the National Junior Honor Society, has hosted or continues to host throughout the course of the next several weeks fundraiser for the LLS with the emphasis on the fun part. Today we just did auditions for the voice competition next week, so that'll be happening along with movie nights, spirit and dress-up days, so they're getting very involved in that. We also have coming up the Wizard of Oz. One of our members is the director of that. So head out on the 22nd through the 24th of March to see the Wizard of Oz. Winter Sports, coaches involved with that on the Winter Sports Awards on the 25th. Academic Excellence on the 26th of March. And then NHS induction on the 27th of March, so busy week coming up right before spring break. And if you're interested in more arts, the Fame Festival is this coming weekend, and that involves the elementary art and 6th grade band. So several members involved in helping students to be successful in all different areas. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Slavkin. Mr. Markham.
Yeah, just a few updates. SRO staffing for 2019-2020. We've talked with Mr. Kurt. There are multiple officers that are interested in being part of our SRO rotation starting next school year, like we have done this year. So we're looking at training for those individuals, and we're going to try to get a few of them in the March training, but that was already full. So we're going to look and try to get them in the next training. And again, obviously this is contingent that we receive the matching safety grant that we received last year, and we'll work on that again this year once that's made available to us to submit. Also, the auditors, we had an exit interview meeting with them on Monday, March 4th. So they were out of here towards the end of February and had a pretty good report from them. So they are no longer here. Also, Mr. Miller and myself were approached, and this is for information for you guys. We had a representative from AT&T contact us about locating a cell tower on our school property. We're kind of in the planning stages of what that could look like. Mr. France has received a contract from them and what that would entail should that be approved or something that you guys want to consider. What their plan would be is to put a tower up on the northwest side of the high school where we currently have an old tower right now, just outside of our cafeteria back by the AC unit. They would remove that tower and put up a cell tower right there. Again, it's AT&T. The only thing that tower currently is used for is our bus radio antenna is affixed to that, and they would affix that same antenna onto that tower. They would pay rent of $850 a month for that cell tower to be on our grounds. So $10,200 a year for an AT&T cell tower on our school grounds. Again, just very early, just wanted to bring it to your attention. Mr. France has the contract that they would propose for that, and he's going through it to see if there would be any issues there. Mr. Miller, anything you would add to that I might have missed, just for information?
What's the general purpose for that? Just a booster tower? Is there anything that they're doing especially, with that as far as invasive or anything on school phones or anything like that?
So with the number of customers they have in this area, they're flooding their towers. They're not getting the data that they need to or the connectivity. So they're looking for better connectivity in the area. They already have a tower that's just north of town that's visible from the backyard. There's one south of town, and they're hoping to get better coverage in town for their customers overall. And so we have the wide open property that they would be looking for. They're not going to want to put it in the park. They're not going to want to put it in somebody's backyard in our community. And when we got looking at what we already had as far as antennas, they would be able to swap that out. It's going to be a little taller, but it's not going to be any visual impairment more than what we already have, really. And so that's where they're coming to. And the company that we're dealing with, PBM Wireless, I believe, and they work with AT&T. they'll handle all the zoning and dealing with us. They'll be coming in if we choose to go forward with that. They'll come in and talk to you folks, and then they'll work with the town also for permits and all that. So I think it's win-win for us. They're gonna put a little cash in our pocket. We're not really gonna be out of anything, and we'll have potentially better connectivity for us in our schools ourselves for the phones. Sometimes we get dead cells, dead spots in the buildings. At the same time, they'll be bringing fiber to that and to that antenna, and they have mentioned, though no details have really been talked about, that we could use that data or connect to it. So now we could have potential competition to Metronet, who we currently use for our data. But those have not been pursued because not everything's worked out yet. All right. Any other questions on that? Again, I think Mr. Markham said this is just informational right now. We're still working through the details of the planning. That they got to get the guys in that put the bus antenna in to figure out all the connections so that they can figure everything that it's going to take.
Well, I'll just tell you, I'm weary of all of them, right? Telcom's unregulated, you know, so what they do with data, I mean, you're not going to change that. They got towers all over as long as there's no special purpose or anything like that. With school data or the kids or something like that. I mean, they're just unregulated, so.
Are you done?
Yep.
Who's doing the negotiating with these folks?
That would be Jeremy, pretty much. I mean,
Okay, just a thought just popped in my head with what you just said about the fiber optic. We just leased 3 acres of ground out there at Laketon. Is there a possibility maybe they'd want to put one out there too to improve the coverage in Laketon, and maybe we could get a little more money and improve our fiber into that building?
Sure.
Actually, we have very good fiber into that building
Do we?
already. We don't have, there's no competition for it, but we paid to have that fiber installed from here to there.
Really?
And then we paid Metronet to put it up for us out there. And really, you know, the need, it's going to be based upon need. If they have,
Well, we might mention to them that we have the land out there in case they want to put up another one.
yeah, we got plenty of room out there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And just, I'd also like to say thank you to Edith Stone. I know she's not here, but she'll be retiring at the end of this school year, and we'll celebrate her more as we get to the end of the school year. But I do want to wish her well in her retirement, and also thank you to Connie for everything that she's done. So hard task to keep this office in line.
Mr. Markham, one quick comment here, because I was going to do this at the end, but since you brought up the SRO training, I just passed out, I gave it to the board several months ago, and I've had the opportunity to reach out, and I'll give you this after the meeting, to a gentleman. He's with the NRA School Shield program, and I was kind of, when I was given this information, it was kind of painted in this light, and I've since found out that this training is completely free, and it's for law enforcement, or like Mr. Bisher, our security. And for the first time, they are going to offer it in the state of Indiana and Montpelier, April 29th to May 3rd. Our SRO officer is interested in attending if the board wants to include him in the audits that have to be done by the state. Mr. Bisher gave us a report. Sure. You know, that checklist has to be done every year. Nobody wants to go take training that they're not going to use, but this is completely free. It's kind of like having a lawyer look at a malpractice suit and having a surgeon look at it. You know, you get two different points of view. And like I said, it's completely non-political, it's free, and it's law enforcement training. And I will tell you that the county sheriffs are going to send some officers to this training. So I didn't know if this was something the board and you wanted to look into. We got a little bit of time. Sure. So I'll give you this. It's got the gentleman's contact name and number on it. If it's something that, let's see, April 29th. So yeah, we could make it the April meeting and the board could approve.
Sure. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Markham, do you have
No, I'm finished.
your reports are finished? Thank you. Mr. Michael?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Connie myself. She has been a tremendous help. Can you imagine someone that's not real familiar with the school corporation stepping in and trying to get familiar with what's going on and how things operate and so forth? And Connie has been a great resource, a great help in helping me make that transition, and I'm going to miss her dearly. I do have her phone number, so maybe I'll call her every now and then and see, well, where is this or where is that? And I know the first day that I got home, my wife, she didn't really say hi or anything. She just wanted to know, do you have a good secretary? Because you need one. And I said, yes, I do. So I think I'm in good shape. So she sleeps at night now, so knowing that. I had the opportunity, matter of fact, today with the Leadership Development Group, and they met at the Peabody Retirement. They invited all three school corporation superintendents in the county, and we had an opportunity to talk about our districts and what we're doing and what our main thrust is and those kind of things. And we had a nice conversation, had time for questions and so forth, and it provided me an opportunity to share some of the good things that are going on in this district. And we all kind of share common features as far as the finances and what the state will do to us or could do to us at any time, those kind of things. And it was just a good opportunity for me to share. Jim Smith, I think most of you probably know, he facilitates that group and works with that group, and he was responsible for the invitation. The last thing is the book study, and don't get too excited now. And we're talking about elections and appointments and policy development and maintenance. And the assignment basically is to give you an opportunity to tell me what you gleaned from the reading, one thing that you gleaned or learned or knew, and it was just solidified in your mind. So I'm going to open it up to the board.
Well, I've kind of learned it really doesn't matter if whether you're elected or appointed, you're on the seat, you know, and so we are called trustees. So there's fiduciary duties, right? And as far as the, you know, the policy, I think, you know, one of the things is, you know, besides approval of budget and stuff like that.
Mr. Hensley,
Little
Mr.
closer?
Trumplinger's having a hard time hearing.
So,
Pull his mic down.
so as far as that goes, you know, the way I look at, you know, kind of on the board, sometimes people, you know, they'll say congratulations, and I kind, you know, it is an honor and a privilege, but it's also a duty, you know, that I look at. And so on March 26th, I think it was mentioned, you know, we've got academic excellence, that we expect excellence from our students, and you know, I think that holds true for, you know, the people on this board, for the administration, right, and really the people in the community. And you know, what I glean on that is, you know, the best way to approach this is through teamwork, right? And we all got our own little positions and stuff, and you know, and there is a difference between micromanagement and governance, basically from a board. But I also see opportunities that aren't present in the educational industry. So it's kind of, you know, I'll be honest with you, it's a little boring read to me, right? I mean, I'm more of a novel person or something like that. But there are skill sets and tools, like I'm, you know, teaching these kids down at Heartland, where there's tools like value stream mapping that we use in other industries, where a board, right, and the administration, you actually, you know, you get out of the conference room, you get your boots on, you get off your butt, and you walk through the schools together, and we identify issues, not from our perspective, not from administration perspective, but from those that do the work. We call those people the value adders. Those are the teachers, those are the food service people, those are the aides, those are the bus drivers, you know. So I think, you know, as I look at this and understand the role of this, there's also, you know, I think we got a great school system. You know, my kids went here, they're intelligent people, and and that's a lot to you guys. I'm on the road a lot, right? So not only do the teachers and administrators, they don't just educate our kids, right? They raise them, right? They nurture them. They put skill sets in them that a lot of times we don't get credit for, right? But so as good as we are, there's always improvement. And I think one of the improvements is communication. I was glad to see that on the board in there, right, is one of the number one things, because with my clients, that's numero uno, you know, and sometimes you can, when you're in power, right, you can have a feeling, you can use authoritative power basically over people, but I think, you know, there's referent power when you can come together. This trip we took up to Paragon, right, I don't think that's intrusive of a board member to get involved. I'm also a business person, I'm a taxpayer, and I'm a parent, right? So I, you know, as defining this role, kind of like, you know, I said to you guys, I'm more of a be-in guy than a buy-in guy. And I think if we expect excellence out of our students, then we should expect excellence out of ourselves, you know, and I see a lot of that going on. You know, the audit, Amy, you know, one thing we've got to do is we can't run this school corporation looking at studies that were paid for and bought saying that our numbers are going to go down. So you can sit there and accept that, right? We can accept that as a board of administration, or we can change that. And I think, you know, the recruitment of pre-K, if we do it right, I mean, that's a step in the right direction. Every educational institution, you know, I've done values training basically with universities, Purdue, Fort Wayne, and things like that. And every educational organization has to walk in that value stream of recruitment. I mean, it's kind of, as you look at the numbers, as you look at what's going on, it's going to just trickle down from the federal government, right? They're shifting, what, $200 million from education into defense for, you know, a wall where, you know, I remember Ron Reagan saying, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall, and now we're shifting our money into it. So there's what I gleaned from it. Short answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the short answer?
Abbreviated.
I said it out loud, didn't I?
Anyone else?
We were all thinking it, so.
Mr. Vanderpool?
Well, I left my book at home, but Mike did say, I think, a lot of good things. I think the board, I'm fine-tuning in my mind what it means to be a board member. This is just my third month, my third meeting. So I still struggle with that a little bit, trying to decide, just kind of like what he said, what's micromanaging, what's governing, what's the right, you know, what's the right way to handle this. So I struggle with that quite a bit. I do agree, though, that I think we'll work best when we're a team. We're not always going to get along. We don't have to get along, but I think as long as we respect each other and opinions, listen, talk, kind of that dance that Ruth was talking about at the beginning, I think will work. I think things will work out. Things will work out fine.
Good.
Well, I've read about halfway through this book, and actually the thing that struck home with me was right here on page 6 in the introduction. It says, there's nothing that mandates school boards to adopt the processes and suggestions recommended in this manual, or any other for that matter. Some school boards will be more reluctant to consider new processes to replace the way we've always done things, and for others it will be just what they need to break the mold and begin operating more professionally and confidently. And I'll skip down to the end because there's a lot of in the middle of this, but at the end of the day, it's about the best way to get the job done. And I heard that man sit right here during the interviews for the board seat, and he was asked a question, and he pretty much just said, I don't care. It's about what's good for the kids. And then in his interview in the paper, and he just said it again, he's not a buy-in guy, he's an in guy. I'd consider myself the same way. I wish I could have said it that eloquently. I'm invested in Manchester. I investigate information, and I'm going to be involved. You know, I was tickled to death to go up there with Dr. Lippy and Mike and investigate this thing with Paragon and the other meeting that we had with, and I apologize, I can't remember the name of the other company here in town. The thing that I think we really need to focus on here as a school board is the product that's coming out. Now, that doesn't mean it's our job to run the school. That's his job and these people. But at the end of the day, when we've lost 200 jobs in this town in the last 7 months, I have to question just a little bit, are we getting it done? Maybe we need to have a mandate out there that says, how do we gauge the talent that we're sending out the door? I've always thought we're doing a pretty good job, but there's always room for improvement. And that pretty much covers it right here on the first page of this book. And that was my short version.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you.
Is that the end of your report? Mr. Michael?
Pardon?
Is that the end of your report?
Yes.
Okay. A Heartland update from Mr. Turflinger.
Oh boy, you get to listen to me again. Okay, I kind of gave you the really short version last month because we were under the gun. I'll try to do the same thing here. When I read through the minutes, some of what I said didn't get in there. So for the folks that weren't here last month, that thing is a gem down there. 3,000 dual credit hours are going to be awarded this year. That's remarkable. I mean, that's 3,000 dual credit hours that some parents not having to pay for. The Community Foundation has scholarships. They're going to give away, Heartland Career Center is giving away 9 scholarships, $1,000 scholarships. You have to apply through the Community Foundation. We need to get that out there, however we do that. Ivy Tech and Vincennes have teamed up, and for Heartland Career students, depending on their grade point and how many credit hours that they've accrued in their dual college credit hours that they earned this year that they're going to get count towards their first year total. As long as they get that, they can get full room and board, or depending on their grade point average, they can get half the cost of their room and board at Vincennes University paid for. And there's also Ivy Tech scholarships. And in closing, I got to go down there last week and meet with some superintendents for lunch, and we took a tour. The Honeywell Center is revitalizing the Eagles Theater, and there's going to be classrooms on the 2nd and 3rd floor for, if you want to be a weather person or TV, digital media. It's an old building. It was kind of neat to see the inside of it. I'm looking forward to seeing it when it's done. And at the end, Mr. Hobbs, every time I see him, brings it up. He would like this board to come down there for either a work session or a regular board meeting, take a tour, and let the culinary arts students cook. Huh? Okay, culinary, thank you. Art students cook a dinner for us. He's been asking for years, and every time I see him, he asks for it. So maybe we can do that here over the summer or early fall. Our plate's pretty full right now, so that's all I got.
I like prime rib.
I'll send your order in.
Then Mr. Turflinger added the facility recommendations by Barton Cohen Villaba.
Yeah, and I don't know how to do this, to do it as a motion or whatever, but I want to bring it up. Like I said, I'm invested. I've been going back through the minutes and stuff, and last month we were presented with that Community Foundation audit that was done on all of the buildings. I would really like, and again, I don't know how to word this, but I would like to see, if the board agrees, 2 estimates on the roof on this building for next month and estimates on the boilers so that we can approve the money next month. Jeremy said there's $1.5 million in the capital building fund, and we were told almost 2.5 years ago that this building needed a roof, and I'm sitting here looking at stains in the, I think we need to get a move on that. That audit was done in July 17, so if the board approves, we get the estimates, we can approve the money next month, and we can get this roof fixed and get these boilers. Boilers are 30 years old. It's time.
So Mr. Turflinger is asking for a motion for the board to direct the school to get estimates for a roof.
And I don't know that
boiler.
we need a motion. If that's the way we want to do it, I'd just like to see.
I'll motion it.
I'd like to see Russ and Jeremy and Jack get together and get the contractors, and maybe even if it's not too much pressure, I know we got a lot of other things, maybe even have a contract in a recommendation from Jeremy and Jack on who to do the work. I mean.
Mr. France, I'm not sure.
You can do a motion to ask them to proceed that way. I don't know if we can do what you're asking that quickly, but at least have them, give them the direction to proceed that way.
So I'll make a motion.
All right, so there's a motion by Mr. Hensley to, is there a second?
Sure.
And there's a second by Mr. Turflinger. Is there any discussion?
I guess I don't even know where to start here. Do we need a motion, or if Mr. Michael and Jeremy understand that that's a concern, and I know we're still working through some of that stuff, can't they just do that on their own, and then when they're ready, present that to the board?
Yes. You don't need a motion, but you can if you want to.
Because, and this is kind of what when I go back to earlier, I'm still struggling in my mind with what it means to be a board member, be proactive, and then micromanage.
I'm just bringing it up because Russ wasn't here when they did
I
that.
don't, and
Okay.
I'm not, it's not a comment on
Okay.
you or your motion, that's a battle I'm constantly fighting since I've started this, in my mind, trying to decide the best way to proceed. I guess I don't have a problem with them looking into that, but I don't know that I'm comfortable voting and forcing them to look into that. I know it's weird, and maybe it's just a distinction that I have in my mind, but.
I feel very similar to Mr. Vanderpool. I struggle with it too, and it's hard to put into words, but it does not feel right to me. If I know that you're thinking about it, I don't know if you have a comment, either one of you?
We've already talked to Jack, and my question, is it a complete tear off, or is it just cosmetic, or what? To my understanding, it's the original roof, and it's been up there 20-some years, and there are some issues, there's no doubt. And we do have one called an estimate. We did have somebody come out and look at it and give us a rough idea as far as what the cost would be. And here again, we can get more detail. Part of the problem is we're not quite sure what's underneath. If we have insulation underneath the main portion of the roof and it's wet, then that's all going to have to be tore out and replaced. So
I spoke to Dana at Barton Cove Illima, and core samples were done when that the first estimate was given, and the solid fiberglass insulation has been penetrated by water. It's going to be a complete tear off.
And that's the reason when he put his estimate together, he included a total tear off.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that's probably what it's going to be. And so Jack is looking at a couple of vendors to see what the cost might be.
So my point, why I made the motion, just so you understand it, is, I was doing classes at IUSB, the Purdue Center up in South Bend, and so for 10 years I'm up there doing classes, and they've got, so the picture we saw the other night, right, of the roof, the buckles and the stuff like that. So I'm looking at that, and so they allowed that to go on and on. So how long has it been like that? Number one, and not to get in anybody's territory, but what I'm saying is that's an investment. And so what can happen when you have a roof leaking? All right, mold. Now, since they're in action up there, it's basically 10 years. They're gutting that whole building because there's mold in the building. And so that's the concern. It's not stepping on anybody's toes or anything else. I don't know how that works either. You just brought it up, so I thought, it's kind of a good idea. the primary maintenance of a facility is so we invest now or we invest more later, and that's my only point to it, Ben. I'm not trying to incede on anybody's control. I'm just saying, hey, let's move on it.
Yeah, and like I said, I wasn't asking for a motion or a second. All I was saying is I sat down, and this thing was done in July 2017, and they told us then we needed a roof, and the core samples were done. And here we sit, it's going to be July 2019 before we can get anything done. And if we don't start moving right now, and same thing with the boilers, they just had an explosion in Carmel, and our boilers are 30 years old. There's no time like the present. The money's in the capital building fund. I'm just saying I'd like to see some estimates, and I really think we need to. I'm not trying to get in anybody's bucket. I'm just saying you handed me this thing. If you didn't want me to read it, you shouldn't have given it to me.
My position is, do the roof, don't do the roof. That's not what it is. I mean, I think everybody can probably agree the roof is old and the roof needs some work. I'm not sure. Again, my position, I'm not sure if it's the board that directs those things. And if I'm wrong, Russ, I'll sit down with you. I'll sit down with anybody to try to help me understand or help me settle that in my mind what it means to be a board member and the governance portion, and not get into the micromanagement portion. I mean, if somebody would come with a proposal, say, hey, we need this amount of dollars, this is what we're going to do with it, and it's going to fix the roof, I'd probably be on board. I just don't know that I'm comfortable directing you guys or any of the other administrators on what is important in their buildings that they're in every day.
And we'll have to look at the budget because we have other needs, facility-wise, and see where that fits in as far as the urgency and that type of thing. But I agree, that was done back in 17, and I think the boilers had indicated we have at least another 10 years, possibly on the boilers. So you begin to look at that, you begin to put a 5 or 6 year plan in place, so we know that we're going to replace the roof this year, boilers next year, whatever. In other words, that's what we would have to look at from a professional to sit down and tell us that information. Boilers probably could be a little bit more efficient. The newer ones are going to be. So there'll be some savings there as well. So we have to take all that into consideration. But we'll have to look at what the appropriation level is and make sure that we do have the money. It looks like $1 billion, but that has some other areas to go to as well. So we'll look into it. We can. And it is. Everybody I've talked to, I don't think there's any question that we need to replace the roof. It's time. I think that's what Jack said. It's time.
So we have a motion and a second, so now what do we do?
From what I'm hearing is that we don't need a vote on it. It's more just a discussion. Is that true, Mr. France, or do we need to do something different?
Since there is a motion and a second now, it can either be withdrawn, because I think they have the general idea, or you can just vote on it. So I guess, Mr. Hensley.
I'll withdraw it, so.
Right.
It's more of a safety thing to me with the mold. Like I said, I've breathed that for 10 years, so, it's apparent.
Did you have anything else, Mr. Triflinger, with that addition?
No, ma'am.
Then we're at the portion of the meeting for comments from visitors. Are there comments for visitors? If there are, you just come up to the mic. Okay, then there's comments and questions from board members.
I'd like to make one. I really think that we need to, as soon as possible, schedule a board retreat, whether it's a barbecue someplace. I know we have to have a moderator. Mr. Adamson can do it. Maybe Mr. France can do it, but I think we need to get all the board members sitting down at a table and figuring out what everybody's strengths and weaknesses are and how we're gonna move forward as a board.
My comment is, I just want to say how awesome that bingo night was. It was good, and I know all the PTO moms and dads worked hard to put it on, and I think you raised a lot of money for the PTO. So it was. Yeah. full-size candy bars. So,
Full-size candy bars.
Yeah. But no, that was a lot of fun. It was good to see them pulling out tables, adding tables, that many parents and kids, and I was there and my parents came, so grandparents were there. There was a lot of people there, a lot of support for the school.
So one comment is, I got a junior now in high school, so part of the board members to kind of get to some of these events, and so we've got a little card with all the sporting events on it. But I have a hard time keeping up with like the plays, like bingo night. That does sound pretty fun, but didn't know about it because I don't have kids in that school. Is there any way to develop something like there's probably too many events to like put on a card like that, but is there a way to develop a schedule? Do we have a schedule like on the website that's kind of spells this stuff out or something, or is it, could we do something like that?
We have a master calendar.
Okay, it's on the website?
And it's on the website too, I
Okay,
believe,
awesome.
right,
Sorry,
Mr. Miller?
just didn't know about it. Good.
I'll invite you to bingo night.
Thank you. I'm not bingo.
Where your mother?
Bingo.
Be my caller.
Toby's probably fighting for that job.
There were a couple updates that I did want to give during this portion of the meeting. First of all, we've heard about the audit meeting, but what I'd like the board to know is that the auditors, they commented on the organization of Mr. Markham and Mrs. Miller and Mrs. Kane and Connie. But they also, what I was really struck by is they commented on the thoughtfulness of the administrators and of the employees and just how thoughtful we were, and that it really set apart our school from other places they worked at. And I thought that was worth noting here in a public meeting, because that truly is the culture of Manchester. Not just about doing our jobs really well, but also about caring about people. So thank you for doing that. And Mr. Markham, if you'd pass that on to the people in the office. Connie, we really appreciate you, and I'm not going to say much more because I know you don't want me to. So I'll see you later this week and talk a little more to you. And I also wanted just to do a basic update of the superintendent search so everybody knows where we are. So the application has closed. The application window has closed, and there's been 15 interested people in that. Tonight, after this meeting, we're going to adjourn to executive session. And Dr. Adamson from the ISBA search, he's leading us through the search, and he's going to share those applicants with us. I want to be very clear, extremely clear, that what ISBA is doing is they are helping us with the process. They are by no means selecting the candidate. That selection lies with the board. So please hear what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. ISBA is here to help with the process, not by any means to select a candidate. And then we are aiming for interviews to be March 25th and March 26th. That's what we're aiming for first round interviews to be. I would expect that there will probably be second round interviews, and then there will be a process where we have a final candidate that we've selected that we will bring here for like a final, I don't even know what it's called, but kind of a final selection, a final interview that we'll be involved in. It is recommended that from ISBA that the board is we're the people that are hiring, we're the people going through that search process, but there are opportunities for other people to weigh in, especially during that final selection and that final candidate. Just to let you know, because I know it's really important to people that we're transparent, and it's also extremely important that we're confidential. And at this level of position, there's people that have their names in that haven't shared that with their employees yet. And so I would expect that if you ask the board about it, they're probably going to say to you, I can't really discuss those candidates. That would be the hope. And again, it's not because we're trying to be sneaky. but it's simply because we're trying to be extremely professional in this process. So that is where we are in the process, and I just wanted to clarify that and let everyone know here in this public meeting. Are there any other comments or questions from board members?
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there a tab on that, on the website somewhere that you can click on to see the calendar of events for each building or for the whole school district?
Yeah, there is, and you can filter it. It's a really great filter. Andy and I use it all the time to know what's going on. We have 2 junior high boys, and they don't communicate really well. So I'm sure that Mr. Miller would be happy to show you how to work that at the end of the meeting. Is that fair, Mr. Miller? Oh, sure. Sure. All right.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? So with that, then we're going to go ahead and adjourn our meeting. Board, let's take about a 5-minute break, and then Dr. Adamson is here, so we'll go ahead and start in about five minutes or so. Thank you.